Hey, twisted people. I apologize. I ran a little over. I get so overzealous sometimes because I had back-to-back live streams. I was like, I want to jump from this. I'm going to finish this time. I'm going to finish this time. But y'all know I talk a lot. So, of course, that live stream went over. And then, of course, I had to talk a little bit to my mom after we finished that. So, most likely, these live streams are going to probably start closer to 6:30-ish. So I am here, though. Don't worry. And God bless, God willing. And today I am so excited for all of you who are joining me for Why the Last Man. Playing FX exclusively on Hulu, right? I don't got cable, so I watch it on Hulu. So so we've had the first 4 episodes, and basically what this one deals with is basically we don't even know if it's a virus, do we all? Is it a virus? What is it? Who knows? Basically, something wipes out all the mammals with a Y chromosome. And what that gives us is seemingly a world where women, or those at least who do not have a Y chromosome, and there's a reason why I'm being specific about that, because the show actually touches on what that means, right? Who are now inheriting the earth from what it was. And so this is also based off of a comic book series that came out some years ago of the same title, right? Why the Last Man. And it is one that I actually read a few of the issues of. I haven't read them fully, but I actually read the last issue of that comic years ago. So I actually know how they ended it. And I read some in between. Like I always return to the series and never really fully read it, but I was familiar with the comic book. So because I want to talk today about some of the differences with the show to the comic, not really in depth, but like just a few of the surface things. And then, how we're feeling about it. This is episodes 1 through 4. And so we're going to be talking about that, kind of an overview. I want to go a little bit more specific in episode 4. Just because that's our current situation and what's going on there, and things are happening. But I want to know, y'all, thank you so much for joining me in the live chat, and those of you who are joining in the replays, always appreciate it. I love talking stories with you all. And we're talking this one. And so we got Cage and we got Diane in the chat. Diane is saying, I'm here. I'm excited to know what you think of this show and the characters. And Cage is saying, even in the comics, there's no clear answer on what exactly wipes out KG. Sorry, I say Cage, right? KG. KJ in the chat is saying, what actually wipes out the characters, right? KJ is saying it's a great comic series. I'm a fan of Brian K. Vaughan. Yeah, let's talk about it, right? So I want to kind of talk about my overall thoughts of the show. And I actually had a published article because, fun fact, what I actually do full time is I'm a journalist, film and TV critic, written wise. I do a lot of written articles. And I did write an article kind of going a little bit more analytical about Why the Last Man and what it means. Because, there's themes in here, right? I mean, you're not going to have a show like this and not tackle certain things and some of the political things, some of the social commentary. And I want to know what y'all think more so. If you had to give this show a grade, what grade would you give it so far, right? We've got 4 episodes we've already had. What are your grades so far? And I want to tell you what my grade is. But I'm curious to know, what grade would you give this so far? Let me know in the live chat and also in the replay section. And so, my grade that I would give this season so far, episodes 1 through 4, is a B. This is a solid B for me. And that's a good thing. It's not an A+ per se. I guess I say that because in the comics of the original series that I did read, I do feel like it was a little bit more fast moving, a little bit more, action. And that makes sense because it was a comic book and you need stuff that grab your attention. You can't just have whole scenes where people are sitting around talking. And I feel like this show, although I love the fact that they dig a bit deeper into the characters and things like that and have these kind of conversations, I'm also kind of like, and I need a little bit more, I mean, I get it. It's dystopian. So it's going to be depressing, but I feel like there was something with the comic book that had a certain level of levity to it in some aspects, where it wasn't completely dour most of the time. And maybe that's just because of the first couple of episodes. So everything's kind of dark and brooding and stuff like that. But also I'm like, would it be exactly like this, where every place they go to and every place everyone is in just seems so messed up already? I mean, I get it. It's time of morning, but it just seems, I kind of got Walking Dead vibes, but at least with Walking Dead seasons, you usually get a zombie coming around occasionally, an excitement of zombies. So you get a little bit of that kind of that horror sci-fi thing going on. And this is a straight drama, right? This is more of a drama. I count it as science fiction because of whatever happened to the men or the people with Y chromosome, but the aftermath of it is very drama centered so far. And I did say, I even said it in my written article, is I don't know if this show would be for people who want something other than a character-driven narrative, right? Because this is a very character-driven narrative. And so for me, I give it a B. I give it a solid B because I love it for that. But I'm also like, they could give me a little bit more, right? Diane is giving it a C. Okay, Diane, let me know why the C. What's your reasoning for the C? Because C is kind of mid-level, right? C is close to a D, and C is not necessarily a B. So you gotta let us know. Like, is there something like you're really just not feeling about it that you want to be better? I'm really curious about that. Kay is saying I'd give it a high B. I agree. And I agree about 355, Agent 355, because I do remember 355 from the comics, and I'm glad there's a little bit more to, I mean, I loved her in the comics. That was one of the reasons why I actually started reading. Fun fact, because I saw a fellow Black girl in a comic book, and she was like so cool, and I was like, whoa, a comic book with a Black woman? Let me see what's going on here. So it's great that this character is still front and center and even getting more fleshed out, especially for episode 4, and we'll talk about that. Diane is saying, I'm not buying that the population would turn that violent so soon. Doesn't seem realistic to me. And I agree with you on that for a number of levels, for a few reasons. And this is where it gets weird, right? Because we're talking about like gender and things like that. Because there's always been this thing of men are who start wars, testosterone, that kind of, idea of violence and stuff and mayhem and everything. Sometimes it's driven by, man, to quote the great music philosopher Beyonce, who run the world, girls? I mean, that's not true necessarily because of, who having governments and things like that. But there is this kind of sentiment that if women were more in charge, and level-headed women, I guess, that it might be a little bit better than some of the stuff we got going on now. Now, I don't necessarily go by that exactly because of the fact that we have seen that women can be just as, fringe and things like that we've seen, at least for me, with what I've seen on the political scene, with some of the people who I've seen and some of the stuff they're pushing. So I definitely don't think it's that necessarily. But I do wonder if it would go as violent as they're kind of showing it, and everyone just kind of not getting along, especially so many people not getting along. I can see that there's going to be troublemakers. There's going to be people that are going to push and fight on some people and stuff like that. But I don't really buy it that everyone's just gotten so violent and so dystopian so quick. The only thing that's fueling that for me is perhaps that everyone is still in the grief moment. And if we remember from some of the earlier episodes, or the earlier episode, that there's some disasters going on too, like the water supply in the tri-state area and things like that. So there are things going on that is exasperating things. It's not a utopia or something. So maybe that's also, resources in some regards are limited in some areas and so on and so forth. So that kind of goes into how it could be kind of dystopian or so dour, like so chaotic so quickly. But then I don't know. yeah, it's hard for me to believe that everyone's just gotten so at everyone's throats, you know. Kay saying, I do miss the comedic. I'm gonna call you Kay. I'm gonna say Kay because Kay is cool. I do miss the comedic aspect of Yorick. His charm is kind of lost. Yeah, we got to talk about Yorick, right? KJ, we got to talk about Yorick. Diane is saying, plus I don't care for Yorick and Karen. How can Diane Lane birth bitch ass man child and selfish? We're going to talk about those characters. I do want to talk about the characters. Diane is saying, I agree overall. I think it would be a better place. KJ is saying, I go with George Carlin. God is a guy because no woman would F stuff up this bad. That is also, that's a very interesting thing. And isn't that the kind of thought process, right? There's always been this idea that if women were allowed to make decisions more and be more in charge, that we'd have a more a society filled with more empathy and things like that, you know, because usually when we see dystopian kind of situations, in terms of science fiction tropes and everything, it's usually the men that start doing a lot of things. Usually one of the main things when we see dystopian future is that the women get brutalized by the men, or the men who have gone real rogue or whatever, right? Because of that testosterone, all that other stuff, right? So it's kind of weird that it's like, okay, instantly we have other women just kind of being like, nah, we're going to brutalize everyone too. But, you know, I mean, when we talk about misogyny and sexism and stuff, people can internalize those things, and they who can be victims of it can also be the people who push forth it because, you know, they don't know anything different. So it's not unheard of, right? It's not unheard of. But let's talk about some of the, I want to talk about overall I got a list here. I wrote notes, y'all, where, okay, so I got my fave characters. I got characters that I really like and I want to go further into. And I want y'all to tell me, let's go through this bit by bit. I want y'all to tell me, who are your fave characters of this show thus far? Tell me in the live chat and also in the replay. Tell me, who are your favorite characters so far? So my faves so far are Jennifer, our U.S. president. I love her. I think Diane Lane is doing a great job. Agent 355. Because, I mean, how could it not be? And I don't say that because I love her in the sense of she's so great. This character is complex. And in some regards, I'm like, yo, nobody can trust this character. But I love that about this character too. And I love the diversity of a Black woman character being able to play that kind of gray character, right? So I love that. So I'm really digging Agent 355. I like Sam as well. Sam is Hero's companion or Hero's friend. And honestly, Hero does not deserve Sam. But I really hope Sam gets away from Hero because Hero does not deserve Sam. And I like Nora. Nora is interesting to me because of what she's gone through. And the fact that she had a cushy job at the White House and then it turned into what it turned into, of her kind of being ousted because, you know, the guy she worked for is no longer around, and, you know, Jennifer just kind of forgot about her. So, you know, so there's that. So and when I say I love them, I say because I think they're the most interesting so far. I think these are characters I want to see more of in terms of where they're going to go with them. And then there are characters that I am neutral about. Right now, I am neutral about Yorick, and I want y'all to tell me who you're neutral about, but I'm neutral about Yorick. Diane has pointed out Yorick is what Yorick is. And I think that's kind of the point though, right? Now, in some of the comics I read of Why the Last Man, Yorick had to grow, but he definitely seemed capable, right? But he had to grow. I feel like they're doing that same thing with this Yorick, but it's even more extreme. Of him being kind of, and I wonder if our coolness towards Yorick in a way is purposeful. You know, I wonder if that's the point, because, you know, in the comic, the Yorick character is kind of very centralized. And I feel like the way the show is doing it is that Yorick is somewhat of a plot point, not completely a plot point, like he's useful. I actually think he has potential to grow. And I do like what the actors doing with this character, but I think in another sense, I feel like the narrative is very much focused on all the women connected to him more so than him himself. And that's a choice. right? You know, some people who are familiar with the comics may not like that. They might want Yorick to play less of a walking, talking plot point, and may want him to be more of the central moving person in this. And I don't mind it though, but I also understand that can be frustrating, especially when watching their scenes together of Agent 355 and Yorick, where you just kind of get frustrated with some of the choices he makes. But I think that's on purpose, right? Diane is saying, I can't stand Yorick. KJ is saying, I'm loving Yorick based on my comics knowledge. Yeah, I think there's potential with him, you know, for sure. Diana saying, yes, the agent is my fave. The president I like. Yeah. KJ is saying 355, Jennifer, Yorick, Sam, Nora, and Mac are your faves. Yeah. I like Mackenzie as well, the daughter. I think Mackenzie has a lot of potential too. That's also who I meant. And Diana saying, I'm guessing he's on a hero's journey. Yes, a hero's journey as in to grow and stuff, not on a hero's journey, because that one, we got to talk about that one. Yeah, hopefully he's on a journey. And in the show, he's a jerk so far. This is the thing about Yorick. I don't necessarily think he's a jerk. I think he's more like centered on himself, not to the extent that his sister is, but very much kind of like, because we also have to think about, I think that's what I'm trying to think of with these characters too, that they all have gone through a really messed up event, right? A whole bunch of people died, people they care about. He lost his dad and stuff as well, and everything, and probably, male cousins, all types of stuff. So it's like everyone's people have a weird way of grieving and stuff. And that may manifest in ways that isn't necessarily the best, I guess. That's kind of my thought process. At least that's the space I'm giving him to be that. Now, there is a character who I cannot give that space to at all. But I do want to talk about the other character that I'm neutral about, that I'm hoping grows on me too, is the character that Amber Tamblyn is playing, which is Kimberly. And Kimberly Cunningham, y'all, I totally think she's a little bit of a spoof of Meghan McCain. If you don't know, that's one of the right-wing hosts. I guess she's leaving the show, but she's one of the right-wing hosts of The View. And I totally believe she is like kind of a bit of a spoof of Meghan McCain, but not so much a spoof. And I'm interested to see where she goes. I also like this actress, so I'm like, this is so cool that she's playing this character. I remember her on the soaps. She was Georgie on General Hospital. That's a deep cut, y'all, because that was years ago. But I am interested to see where this goes with her, because I do think she might end up becoming such a cool villain, or she may end up kind of growing out of kind of that thought process that she is in now. Now, what I do know about Kimberly's character is that she's new to the show, right? She's not in my understanding is that she's not in the comic book. So this is a new character, and that kind of, puts us in a position of not knowing what the show is going to do with her at all. So I love that she's there though, because I'm kind of interested to see where it goes, because I just love that kind of contrast we get between her and Jennifer, and where she might want to go with this. She's totally right-wing and stuff like that, but sometimes you don't always got to agree with the character to kind of love how they're played. She might be a character I love to hate, and I'm fine with that kind of character. And Diana's saying Yorick is blinded because of his white privilege he's been coasting on. And, 355 actually points that out to him. And he actually says, oh, whatever, give me a break. But I think there's some truth to that as well. White male privilege. And this is the thing about this show. This show is going to touch upon stuff like that, which is, I think, I love that about this show, because, and I hope it's not just, people who are susceptible to or lean towards this kind of, these kind of themes and these kind of thought-provoking questions of who get into it. I hope many science fiction type fans kind of get into it, because I think science fiction, just like horror, is its best when it does reflect on society in its storytelling. So it touches on those kind of questions. Diana saying, oh, yes, I see that. She's annoying about Kimberly. KJ is saying, maybe when you've had a lot of personal loss in life, you are a bit too harsh on characters. Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. When you've lost people and stuff, as someone with a big family, because I have a big family, I love the fact that I have a big family, but when you have a big family, you have more people that you can lose. I lost a cousin some months ago to gun violence, a close cousin of mine, and it was a lie. I think I told you all that on the community page when I took a little bit of a break. And, it's one of those things where, what does grief do to people? And this is why I want to give him a little bit of the space, right? Because I'm like, I get what grief and things can do to people, but then I know what grief and stuff can not do to other people. Does that, some people go through stuff and they don't become jerks, right? So, I mean, how much space do you give it, right? So there's that. Now, I want to talk about the character I cannot stand. And I don't know if that's on purpose, but y'all already started talking about her. Hero. Such an ironic name for such a opposite of that name character. I was so, and in particular, I've been annoyed with this character probably since the first episode, to be honest, just because of some of the decisions she was making. Not her being like the side chick or anything. I don't care. I'm not going to judge you on that. But it was like she kills the guy and she just kind of sits there. I'm like, why were you trying to hit, like, why were you trying to hit him with a thing in the first place? Were you not thinking? Like, that's a lot, first of all. Why are you being so violent to somebody? I mean, yeah, he hurt your heart. He broke your heart, but that's not any excuse. I mean, think of it if the roles were reversed and he was doing that to her, right? Like he just started slapping her because she hadn't really broken up with her husband or something. Like it was like, yo, where is this coming from? Calm down. You know what I mean? Like she on some other stuff. That was red flag 1 about Hero. But this particular episode 4, the latest episode, really drove it home. I thought something was going to be revealed. Diana saying, why did I think her name was Karen? We probably thought that because that was the fake name she gave to Nora. She gave a fake name, and we're going to talk, we're talking about that. She gave a fake name to Nora this episode, and she called herself Karen, I believe. And I think she called Sam Benji. And so she's just lying left and right because she seems to be very good at lying. But yeah, and it's kind of also ironic. She gave herself the name Karen, right? Right. She's a Karen. She's got some Karen tendencies. But no, Hero is just, to me. I was hoping, because they really drove it home that she didn't like her mom. And I was hoping something would be revealed to kind of like justify that. To justify not going to the Pentagon to get supplies and help from your mother, especially when your friend who needs their injections or the thing that, I'm not exactly sure. I think it's testosterone, like the injections that people who are trans need. Forgive me if I butcher that because I don't know the exact terminology and stuff for it. But your friend needs your help. You claim you need your friend. And it's such a manipulative situation with her and Sam. I like the character of Sam. I think the character of Sam, which is also new to the comic, because I don't believe Sam is in the comic book series. And so you got this character that's great. But Hero is so manipulative. She's just so adverse about going to the White House and letting her mother know she's alive. And I was kind of waiting. I'm like, what is the reasoning? There's got to be a reasoning. It can't just be because of some privileged, my mommy, talked bad about me because I was telling her I was the side chick in a relationship and she said something mean and I didn't want to talk to her anymore. It can't, because if it's that, I'm side-eyeing you. And I don't think that's justified. And I honestly don't think we're going to get a big justification because I don't think the show is going to try to make Jennifer a villain or anything. So I do think a lot of this is Hero building up a lot of her own stuff. Now, I do know what happens to Hero in the comic books. And that probably is most likely going to happen in this. And I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't watched the comic, because Hero is in the comics. But it makes sense too, because this character is obnoxious. I mean, we talked about a little bit earlier, Yorick having some privilege to him, but at least I feel like Yorick tries to be aware of trying to be a feminist man, which is its own kind of thing, because you got some feminist men who like to try to tell other women how they are not feminists and all this other stuff, being condescending, being a man and everything. But at least I feel like Yorick actively tries not to be that, even if he still stumbles into it. While I feel like Hero is on this oblivious, it's really all about me, but I'm going to try to act like I'm a victim kind of a thing. Like everyone's judging me. You even saw it when she went to that meeting, right? I think it was the AA meeting, or it was like her AA meeting, I think. And in the first episode, and she kept taking the phone call and stuff, and she didn't really seem interested in what the guy was saying anyway. She wasn't really engaged in what the guy was saying. So it was kind of like, yo, what is this character? Now, do I think she's going to go on a journey of growth? I honestly don't see that happening. I actually think her and Yorick are parallel plot lines in a way, and that we may see Yorick, like they're both privileged kids. And I think what we might see is Yorick go one way and Hero go another way, of where their paths diverge in very drastic ways. Like what would someone who is privileged and not, trying to deal with that turns into, versus someone who does try to deal with that and what they grow into. But let me know what y'all think about that, because I just really don't like Hero. And it's not even like, oh, I don't like her because I love to hate her. Like I kind of feel like I'm going to feel eventually for Kimberly. I feel like I'm gonna love to hate Kimberly. I feel like with Hero, I just am like, this character is so annoying. It's not even well written necessarily. I mean, it's not that's badly written, but it's like, oh my gosh, this character. That's how I feel about Hero, and not in like, oh, that's good plot line. It's like, no, she's mean and she's cruel. She is cruel. KJ is saying, but it was an ironic name for Hero, right? Yeah, and KJ is saying, I do love that they put trans stuff in the series. I too really like that representation. And this is what we're talking about. I'm going to talk a little bit about it with the whole idea of the Y chromosome, right? And what that means and how the show is tackling that a bit more in a second. Diane is saying, maybe she's adopted and her mom told her. Now she resents her. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, KJ, New York tries not to be a jerk, but Hero seems to just kind of play into it. I mean, she sabotaged the car. Your friend needs you. Your friend is vulnerable, right? Your friend Sam is vulnerable in this new world, right? Because people are going to wonder whether she's a male and all this other stuff. Not she, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. He is a man, or, stuff like that. A lot of, and they explain this. Sam explains this, that they are going through this. This is going to be hard for them. And Hero just doesn't seem to care. She plays like she cares. She even tries to seduce Sam a bit, but that was so manipulative to me that she tried to seduce Sam, because I'm like, you literally are the reason why they're not getting the safety that they need, and you're playing this up like we could just plant a garden in the what Diana saying, oh, that's interesting about some of the stuff saying Diana saying her sabotaging the car made me so mad. That definitely was cruel. It was very cruel. And I'm supposed to have this sob story for her of why she really just doesn't want to see her mom. And it reeks of spoiled little rich girl. That's what it reeks of. I really like Sam too. And I'm hoping Sam has a chance to get away from Hero, and that they don't feel like they need to keep Sam attached to Hero to be a part of the plot line. I don't think Sam needs to be attached to Hero to be a part of the plot line. So I'm hoping that there's, something with that. KJ saying, I get you. I'm starting to dislike Hero, but Sam is a great character. I love Sam. Yeah, I agree. I love Sam. I'm just hoping that Sam doesn't have to be completely tied to Hero the whole time, just so that Sam gets screen time. I'm hoping maybe they just, do something else with Sam. in connection to what we're dealing with, right? Because, in speaking to the trans issue that's going on in this new world, right? Now, in the comic book, my understanding is that the way that Yorick was able to get around was that he would claim that he was trans, and that's how he fooled people. Now, I did read online that some people didn't like the trans representation in the comic books because they felt like at times it was treated like a joke. And I cannot speak to that because all I know is that plot point that he would tell people he was trans in the comic book to be able to go out and stuff like that. I will say that I do love the fact that in the TV series, at least, they are really, one, we have a main character who's Sam, and I love that. And I think you have to talk about that. It's the year 2021. Yes, all the mammals with a Y chromosome have been killed off, except 2, the monkey and Yorick. But that does not mean there are no men, right? Because of how we defined gender. And, it was something interesting that Sam said when those women came in at the end and they were like, oh, you actually choose to be a man. And Sam was like, I didn't have a choice. And, that's very much what is the thing of like, trans people. There's the idea of they didn't choose the body that they were in and that, they don't feel like it's the body that they should be in. The body that they were born with, right? And so I kind of like that they kind of are putting that in there because that is the question, right? Like just because I'm trying to put this in a way, like just because Yorick is the one with the Y chromosome and can produce like, I guess semen and have a baby and stuff like that, that does not mean he's the only one that is male identifying. So what does that mean for the new society as well? Because you do have people who are male identifying, and what kind of prejudice might they come in contact with, right, from characters who may be men hating? Because I do know that's the thing in the comic book, that there is like, a potential for some women group or whatever who might really hate men and things like that. So what does that mean for trans men, right? So that's a whole other can of worms. Like what kind of, discrimination in this new world will they be dealing with? And I love that we're getting that through the Sam character. And I think it's great for representation, right? I do. I think it's great for representation. I love the way it's presenting this plot, so I'm really, really digging that. But let me know, y'all, are y'all digging that plot line? Do you think it's a little too on the nose? But yeah, let's talk about that. So, what we have thus far right now is their Agent 355 and Yorick are trying to meet up with a scientist who may be able to figure out why Yorick is the last human with a Y chromosome that is alive. And we got that plot line in episode 4. And then we had the plot line of Hero and Sam, then plus Nora and Mackenzie. So those were the kind of 2 major ones. We didn't get Jennifer today. I was kind of surprised that we didn't get anything with Jennifer, which makes me think the next episode will probably be heavily focused on the Pentagon. So let's talk about those 2 plot lines for episode 4, because that's kind of where we are. So what we come from with, and I'm going to talk about Yorick and 355 first. So with Yorick and 355, they are just arguing most of it, right? And you see kind of layers of their personality. You see moments where both of them, where you see moments when one is right, one seems wrong, one seems right, one seems wrong. It kind of switches. There's not one thing where, yes, Yorick was probably the most obnoxious out of the duo in terms of him just really not listening to her and not recognizing that there's something bigger going on than finding your ex-girlfriend who walked out on you anyway. Because let's remember, Yorick actually lied to his mom, right? Yorick made it seem like he and his girlfriend were engaged, and he was like, "Yeah, I was going to tell you," but it's like, no, she didn't take your thing. Why did he feel the need to lie at that moment? I don't know. Which also just kind of shows his immaturity to lie and not acknowledge the fact that he actually got rejected. Not that it would have made sense for her to, to be engaged with him, considering he didn't know what the heck he was doing with his life. So we get this thing where he's still very much about his ex. He could care less about this whole situation. So I totally understand where 355 was coming from and saying, that whole blowout they had on the bridge where she was like, she was like, you usually walk around like you're the most important person in the room. And of course he doesn't want to hear this because people like that never want to hear that kind of thing about privilege and things. And she says, the one time you are the most important person in the room, you don't want to have anything to do with it. Right. Like when you, and let's talk about that. Right. Because him being the most important person in the room means he has to be selfless. Right. He has to not center on himself, even though he's the most important person in the room. And Yorick just isn't at a point where he can really, I don't know, fathom that maybe, or even really take on and understand the gravity of the situation, that you are the last human man that we know with a Y chromosome. You may be the way that we're going to like not die out as humans. Okay, but there's sperm banks and stuff like that around the world. So, I mean, science means that they probably won't die out as humans, but in terms of like a live specimen and stuff like that, with everything going on, maybe to try to figure out the cure. So if women end up having more babies and they're boys, that they don't die, things like that. Like there is the fate or the future of the human race. He is a big chunk of that, perhaps, right? And he's still just all on about his ex, who he lost track of. And I get it. You love someone, you want to hope that they're around, but it's like enough that you're running off the way you are. They had some close calls, which were intense. I didn't fault Agent 355 from potentially killing those women who were going to, who were like basically doing some police brutality against Yorick, and the thing. And then, Yorick also made a point because he was like, you killed those 2 pilots, and there was some truth to that, because the question is, did Agent 355 need to kill those pilots? Like maybe they could have helped her get to where they needed to go. And I want y'all to tell me, do you think Agent 355, you think Yorick had a point? That maybe Agent 355 is kind of doing overkill, for lack of a better word, or maybe the best word, when it comes to how she goes about kind of seeing other people as disposable, right? And that's kind of what she does. And that's not necessarily a good thing. So will we see growth from that? KJ saying it's kind of like with Invincible, when you have 1990s adaptation being modernized, you need to change with the modern world. Exactly. You need to update it so that it's, more approachable to people now. So it doesn't seem dated, right? And so I'm glad they've done some of those things. And so, the whole thing with, Agent 355, we also got a beautiful opening scene of the actress, Ashley Romans, doing singing and dancing. And from what I read, that is actually her doing the singing and dancing. So that was really cool. Multi-talented. I'm just loving her portrayal of Agent 355. And that was also interesting. So we know that there's a past life for Agent 355. We don't know exactly what it is, but there's something going on there. And then we have them playing the card game, and she gets that look in her eyes. I don't trust her still. And I think she lied to Yorick. I think when she was like, I'll help you find your girlfriend, like, I'll do it. She's a liar. She's very good at lying. She lied to those pilots. She lied to that guy she blew up last time. She's very good at looking in, and you can always tell. And I think it's the actress's choice or the directing choice, so we know, is that she's looking at them and then her eyes go blank, like very serious. And I think that's the tell that she's lying, that she has no intention of helping this person out in any kind of way, and that she's just telling them what they need to hear to get what she wants. Now, there's a contrast between her and Hero in that regard. Hero is very selfish in this regard, because she tells people, she seemingly lies and stuff to get what she wants, and manipulates people. But the difference between her and Agent 355 is that Agent 355 does it for her missions. So I think that's a big difference. And that's a really great difference between these characters, and really shows a contrast, right? We're seeing the contrast between Hero and Yorick in terms of the privilege maybe diverting. And we're seeing the contrast of what one person does, or one person, the justification for one person trying to manipulating others versus the justification for someone else manipulating others. So I think that's a good contrast. But it seems like at the end of this episode, they came to a truce, Yorick and Agent 355, even if it was under false pretenses. Because like I said, I totally think she's lying to him. She has no intention of helping him find his girlfriend. But I think that was for us to get to know Agent 355 a bit more. Yorick was there. We saw some growth from him, but not a lot. And I think it was more about Agent 355. But I liked it. KJ is saying she may be a bit rough, but for her skill set, she does what she needs to do. And that's what I agree with as well. And that's the difference between her and Hero. Hero does a lot of her stuff because she just wants to survive and get by for herself. And, Agent 355 does it because of her service, and does that mean she has a higher body count because she sees more people who get in the way of her service as expendable? Yes. And does every person she might kill deserve it? No. And I do kind of like that Yorick doesn't want her to kill everybody. I do think that's something good about him to say, hey, you don't got to try to take everybody out. You can't just be killing people like that. So then we had Hero and Sam. And I've kind of already talked about how poor Sam, they found a car. They're about to go. And basically, Hero uses wanting to help Mackenzie to basically go back to the house. It's almost as though, I think in some way she wanted to help Mackenzie. I don't think she didn't, but I also think a part of her was kind of like, here's my excuse to not leave. And then she uses it against Sam saying, yeah, what are we going to do? Leave her child? Like, she uses a lot of guilt trips. She uses a lot of victimizing of herself to get Sam. It's a very manipulative friendship. And I don't know if anyone's ever been in friendships where people try, or even relationships, period, where someone constantly is kind of playing on your emotions to get what they want out of you. It was very infuriating to watch. And I was just like, I cannot wait till Sam gets away from this girl, because this girl does not deserve Sam. Because Sam stayed back for her. Right? Sam could have went with those other people. I think they were other trans men, and could have gone with them to where they were going, because she said she'd go too. And then she chooses not to go. And then she claims to Sam, well, you could have left me. And it's like, well, he's not a jerk like you are. He's not going to leave his friend. You probably were totally okay with abandoning him depending on how it serves you, but not Sam. You know what I mean? So I felt bad for Sam with that, and Hero's manipulation, and just basically like, oh, we'll just stay here. You don't even got no food or anything like that. You're just gonna stay in some rando house. Like, how do you pick up from people who might try to hurt others or something, right? No real plan, just kind of thinking about herself. And then, of course, we get Nora and Mackenzie, and it was great to see Nora again. I think Nora's going on her own journey, and we probably will see more of that. Because we remember in the first episode, she couldn't even shoot a gun. She had a gun, but she never shot it. And I think, she even pointed out in this episode how she gets like mugged a lot and stuff. She's an easy target, which is, sucky. I mean, this thing about, even with women in charge, you're always in society, there are bullies, and it doesn't really matter if it's all men, if it's all women, if it's a mixed crowd. Women can be bullies too. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing dangerous bullies roaming about. A little bit more than I think there would be in such a succession, but they're there. And so, Nora's getting bullied. In the beginning, I kind of felt like, not that she deserved some of it, but, given the PR and stuff that she did for the president and how she kind of threw Jennifer under the bus and things like that, I was like, well, you're not exact. But then I thought to myself, well, she's doing her job, right? So I can't really fault her for that. And she lost her son and her husband. Although, which was interesting, in the first episode, she didn't want to kiss her husband on the lips. So I don't know what that, maybe, and this is what I mean, maybe we'll see more with Nora and her kind of like, we don't got a lot of backstory with her. We know she gets stressed out. She didn't want to kiss her husband, but she seemed like she loved her husband, but she didn't want to kiss him. Her and Mackenzie weren't exactly close, but they're getting close, I guess, because, she's the parent that's left. So I'm also interested to see where that goes. Hey, Tad, thanks for joining and saying hi. Always a pleasure. So I I also loved that she told Hero at the end, she was like, don't tell these people who your mother is. She was like, I used to work at the White House, Karen. Like she calls her by the fake name that she gave her. And I just thought to myself, of course she knows who you are. You know, I mean, honestly, I'm surprised no one else recognizes who she is, because I know the presidents that have been in my lifetime thus far, I usually can recognize their kids, you know? So I feel like if I saw their kids on the street, I would recognize them, you know? So it's kind of like, how does she think she's going to just kind of go under the radar? I guess she could just say she looks like somebody else. KJ is saying, Sam is a good friend. I hope to see more about Nora and Mac. I mean, yeah, without men, you'll still have bullies. Exactly. And so I think that's what we're getting. And I kind of hope that Nora, if people watch The Walking Dead, it kind of reminds me of, I feel like Nora can kind of have a Carol story, where you had Carol who was kind of, you know, meek, and she, you know, didn't really fight and things like that. And then she grew into who Carol is now, right? On The Walking Dead, the television series. And I feel like Nora could do that. I don't think it was a mistake. I don't think it was just a throwaway that they had her talk about how she never fired a gun. Because I do think we might get to a point where Nora starts to do some empowerment for herself. And I'm looking forward to that. So I'm hoping that becomes a thing with her. But yeah, those are kind of the main two plots. This is the thing about this show. It's slow moving. It's a slow moving show. Like major things happen, but like to get to some of those plot points, it's a lot of talking up to that point, which I don't mind. I don't mind it because I've kind of accepted that's what I'm getting, but I know that can throw off some people. But yeah, let me know, y'all. What was your favorite part in this episode? Did you have some favorite parts? Let me know, comment down below. Let me know in the live chat. For me, some of my favorite parts for this particular episode was seeing Agent 355 kind of do her thing. And the singing in the beginning. I thought that was a great opening scene, even if I had no idea what it was about or what it was connected to, because she seems to sleepwalk. But that was kind of probably my favorite part, and her kind of just doing the thing with the bartering, getting the motorcycle and stuff like that. Yeah, KJ, I would love that. Carol TV show version would be badass. Yeah, I think that's what we might be heading for with Nora, and I'm here for it. I think that would be really great. To see that transformation, because she seems to have her head on her shoulders, even if this is a new world for her, right? You know, if you think about it with Nora, she came from a world where people, you know, you tweet it, you put out something in the news, all of that is gone. Think about it, like Nora's job, her skill set was manipulating messaging and stuff, right? PR and all this other stuff, things that are no longer at all really relevant or useful necessarily in this current situation. So she must be feeling somewhat useless almost. And so it'll be interesting to see where she finds her bearings in this new world. And I think that's what we're seeing with some of the more interesting characters, where it's a new world and they're trying to figure out how they fit in it. So I'm excited about that. But overall, I'm digging the show. It's a solid B so far. Would I like a little bit more action in some of it? Yeah, a little bit, but I also don't want to sacrifice some of these character introspections that we're getting to. So I'm half and half on that, but so far so good. Digging it. So let me know if you are digging it, y'all, and what you're looking forward to in the next episode. And, you know, where do you see this season going? And is there anything from the comic books that you know in particular that you are excited to see perhaps happen on the TV show? So let me know about that. But, you know, as always, thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive and review breakdown of Y: The Last Man. And, you know, God willing, we'll do this again next week and we'll talk about it. And until then, thank you all so much for joining, and thank you for engaging with these stories with me. And if you have not already, please do give this video a like, because, you know, you got to feed that algorithm monster. That always works. And yeah, until then, stay safe out there, everyone. Yeah, KJ, before we go, I'll see what you have to say. I love any 355 growth and backstory, something that the comics was missing. Definitely. I'm loving that too so far. So here's to more Agent 355 and a little less Hero. Yeah. Okay, y'all. Have a great one.